So here I am. Hope you let me come inside. We don't have anything left to hide. Well, I'm on my way. Don't worry, baby. I'm on my way. Don't give up on me now, 'cause I'm on my way. Don't worry, baby. And everyone's gonna hear what I have to say. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey.
I'm Paul Klemperer, and I'm sitting here with Joanna Ramirez, my good friend. We've known each other a long time.
A long time.
We've played a lot of music,
Yes.
a lot of laughter and tears behind us now and moving forward.
Yeah.
And you have a new album out.
Yes.
And I was privileged to play a little bit on it, and it's some great stuff. A lot of original music.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to just tell me, like, when you were putting it together, you're a very methodical artist, which I really appreciate.
Yes.
And so you have a concept that the album really sort of developed with the album.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that concept stemmed from the music that I chose to grow up listening to. I mean, I had my influences. I'm the youngest in the family. Two older sisters, 8 and 7 years apart from me, and an older brother who's 4 years older than me. And then my parents' musical influences.
Yeah.
So, but when I was choosing music, and I was, always listening to music, I went towards, soul music and R&B artists and watching Soul Train every Saturday, and
Right,
and then, as I grew older, it was, all the 80s Prince, Michael Jackson, Sade, and then it kind of progressed into, so I've always been focused on, soul, R&B, and, in the last few years, hip-hop, and, they call it neo-soul. That's a controversial term in some circles,
But there's a continuity to it all.
There's definitely a continuity, and, but when I started in what I call the family business,
Yeah.
I was following pretty much in the footsteps of my father, who played, rhythm and blues, and kind of a rock and roll sound, in the early '60s. And he was in a band with his two brothers, and at one point, my mother's two brothers were in the same band.
Family band.
And so,
Like a lot of musical families, and I've talked to friends that I play with, you're synthesizing, you're absorbing all these influences.
Yeah.
First of all, just to see that people can get together and play music and perform, did it sort of like spark you? That was something that you always wanted to, be on stage or to perform music or share
Yeah.
music, be part of that?
Well, not at first. My stage, I was drawn to the stage through dance. So when I was, my mother used to call me Hum On, like the little ham,
I'm on.
I was starting in, tap and ballet when I was in
Yeah.
grade school, all through grade school. And so that's where I was the performer.
Yeah.
But I was always singing from really little. I'd get my sister's albums and, focus in on the liner notes and the lyrics and all
Yeah.
of that. So I was already doing that, but I never thought about seriously going into music as a profession until I was in my 20s.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to ask, that sort of progression that leads to the album.
Yeah.
I've noticed this myself as a performer and others, that when you're growing up, you're absorbing all this stuff. It's sort of
Yeah.
like you're just a child, so you're absorbing it. And then you start to, like you said, for yourself, soul music spoke to you. You start to find what works, what speaks to you, and where you're finding your voice. And for me, it was, as a sax player, was, jazz, and,
Yeah.
but also soul, like King Curtis and Junior
Yeah.
Walker, those folks.
Yeah.
And that was like, I'm diverging, I'm sort of starting to take risks, because sometimes the music you like isn't what the family is into, and you just sort of have to carve out your own turf. So
Yeah.
did you have that kind of a period where creating your identity as a performer, just your musical tastes?
I think, you know, like I said, I started out in the roots music and the blues because not just from, you know, what, and really I wasn't conscious of what the kind of music my father was playing until I got into my first band when I was still living in Dallas, where I was born and raised. And, you know, just kind of defaulted into the blues. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Robert Cray were huge influences on me. And then, you know, of course, they're emulating the greats, and so then I went back, you know.
Chicago blues.
And my father helped me with that. I mean, I'll never forget, he gave me this cassette tape. He had taped off the radio, a great, you know, independent station up in Dallas, KNON, and it was, one side was Freddie King, and the other side was Albert King. And Freddie King was the one that I really gravitated to, as far as, you know, vocally and all of that. So when I was getting in my first band, we were doing a lot of those blues covers and everything.
And to me, you know, it's all music.
Yeah.
But I know that you define yourself as being influenced by soul, or you gravitate towards that. But when I've worked with you, you do have a lot of blues in you. And
Well, I mean,
it influences your style, and it's very much a sort of, I'd say, a natural part of your expressiveness. And so I hear in your singing and your the arrangements and your songwriting, a lot of blues, soul, R&B, they kind of flow together.
They do, yeah. And well, blues was where I trained my voice. That was the genre where, you know, okay, I'm going to be a professional singer, and that's the genre that I was really focused on at the time. And so, and then that just progressed with the other musicians that I worked with along the way, and then more into roots stuff, and then more into Americana stuff. So, I mean, I feel like my bass was amazing, you know, as far as like vocally, but when I wasn't focused on playing music, I was listening to, you know, soul, R&B, contemporary R&B, and all of those artists all through the decades. So
and as I was saying, like this sort of a development. You know, when you're young, you're absorbing. Then you get older, you kind of create your identity and synthesize it. And I see, as a mature performer on my way, it's like what I like about the album particularly is it's the freedom you're expressing yourself. You really have your voice in it. And, I'd like you to speak to that. Just like what is, I don't want to say message, but, you know, like at this point in your life, kind of like putting this out, what are you feeling, and what have you synthesized?
Well, the copy that I put out, you know, when I finally released the album, it's a groove-laden spiritual journey, you know, because all of the songs have somewhat of, you know, an influence of my spirituality and just kind of, you know, things that I believe in kind of interjected, you know. But at the same time, you know, with certain songs, I definitely want my music to be relatable, as a universal theme. I think one of the tracks, Sundays, which I wrote after my mother passed away in 2017, you know, I wanted to write a song for her, and that came together in between the two sessions, between late 2018 and the second session in spring of 2019. I wrote Sundays. And so when I started, I tried to, you know, make it personal, but then I wanted to make it universal. You know, anybody listening to it can relate to loss, but then leave it on a hopeful note as well. So my songwriting is, you know, you describe me as a very methodical artist, and I am. I'm very slow with my songwriting. You know, to the first two songs on the album, I had them back in 90-something with my first band, and they just never got recorded, you know. So, it just kind of evolves that way. And
we serve no wine before it's time.
That's right.
I don't embarrass you or anything, but women that I know are inspired by you. And as a performer,
so nice.
And part of it is that you're doing it yourself. You know, you're up there on stage, and you have created your own identity, which is this synthesis of different influences, and you've struggled, you know, as we all have, to keep going, just keep going, and so that shows. And that's one of the things I hear from people that have listened to your music, that your voice really speaks to what you've experienced, that you take over the stage and you tell them what you're, through the music, you tell them what you're thinking, and they really, that people dig that, and particularly women have been inspired by that.
And that's very flattering that, whenever I get any kind of praise from artists that I admire, I think that's the wonderful thing about the Austin music community, that it is a community. And it's the reason that I moved here in 1998, because Dallas, no offense, hometown, but it was hard to kind of crack that nut. And that's pretty much why I came to Austin, because the band that I had, we weren't really playing in Dallas. We were playing in Denison and just every place but Dallas until like the very
the
end.
Metroplex.
And then when I had my first band here, the blues band, we would go back to Dallas and play some really cool clubs. But when I moved to Austin, it was like audiences just want to love you. It's more open-minded, and the music community was open and willing to let me in.
That's what I felt here as an artist.
Yeah.
And it's a good place to grow.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I tell people, it's hard to make a living here, but but it's a great place to create and figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Speaking of that, what do you see as like the next step now the album's out?
And it's been out a long time, Paul.
Yeah, and
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, COVID and various forces beyond your control. But you are getting out there and promoting it and getting responses. And what would you like to see happen over the next year?
Oh gosh, just live shows. I miss it so much. We had a show in May of this year when we were kind of in a hopeful place with everything that's been going on, and then just trying to get more gigs, and hopefully we all get to a place where we're all comfortable playing in an indoor setting, and
that would be nice.
And so I'm hopeful for the album release show is happening next month on November 20th, and this is the third rescheduling of that show. It almost happened at the end of July, and
you do persevere.
Yeah, I'm like a dog with a bone sometimes.
That's
it's
right.
just like, I don't know if it's a smart thing or a crazy thing, or but
I'm looking forward to that. November 20th is going to be a good show.
And at the wonderful O4 Center, I'm just so psyched about it being there. That's such a fantastic room, So.
Well, again, it's this album is a synthesis of many musical parts of your journey.
Yeah.
You've struggled to get the album out through all these different roadblocks and obstacles. And I found this to be true with my performances during the whole COVID period, that showing up and doing it, people do appreciate it. And it's like, it's just music, and yet music is so important to helping people come together as a community, to persevere, to recharge their batteries, to find inspiration.
Yeah.
And so I think that album and your performance has that. It's good, fun music. It's great to dance to listen to, but it's also inspiring without being preachy, I think. I mean.
Oh wow! Thank you. That's kind of what I was going for.
I hear the references. The soul. There's a lot of. I don't want to say. Definitely from the black music tradition and the struggles for civil rights, human rights. That is sort of a thread through that. There is that resonance, I guess, in your music. That it's about liberation. It's about struggling to persevere, whether on a personal or community level.
Yeah.
And that just just to get up on stage and put that out there. At this time it's not easy, but people appreciate it.
No, I took my time making this record. I mean, it was almost 2 years in the making. I started in December of 2018, and it was released in February of 2020. So we just started to ramp up. And then I did some live stream in the summer, and I just couldn't give up, because I feel like this is a really special album. And the performances from the musicians are incredible. And I just really persevered with trying to get this show to happen, because it wasn't just about celebrating me, the music that I wrote, but the people that I made it with, and to have everybody on that stage that was on that record, hopefully, it's just really important to me. So, so that I can publicly give them kudos,
Nice.
and sing everybody's praises. And,
That is the
and
live
give
show.
a great show,
Yeah.
That's like the ultimate goal. And with backup singers and a horn section, thank you, Paul, it's going to be a really awesome
That'll
night.
be special.
Yeah.
Well, if we have time, I'd like to just delve into the songwriting aspect, because you're known as a stage performer, and you bring it. You get on stage, but
Yeah.
you're, like I said, a methodical, thoughtful songwriter. And this is a town of songwriters. And as a songwriter, do you have any thoughts about that process, or like what goes into the ideas you want to express? Is it like do you hear a certain style of a song and say this would be a good sound to express an idea, or does the lyrics come to you? Where do you get your inspiration?
It starts off with like pieces, so it could be a groove or a drum, groove I'm hearing on a contemporary R&B song, or it starts from lyrics I've written that I don't have a melody in my mind. This album was a lot of recording into my iPhone.
Yeah.
When I'd hear melody ideas, and then I would like pair them with the lyrics. But then, for me, it's a very solitary process for me. I've rarely collaborated with anyone in the past. I think I did with my very first band, but I tend to hear arrangements and I hear melodies, and I know exactly how I want everything to be put together.
And those, as far as the soul R&B reference points from growing up, is that you sort of draw on that to organize the sounds?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, textures that I want included, on things, that I've listened to all my life. Feelings, definitely just kind of an ambiance. I like to get into the technical part of the mixing and, creating a sonic, feel to everything. That's important to me,
You do play guitar yourself, right? A little
Very
bit.
little.
But do you use any instruments in composition? Do you?
I had in the past, not so much for this record though. But I have in my songwriting in the past for sure. Yeah.
And as far as the 60s and 70s, like we both grew up in that, and it's such an important reference point, and just the kind of source for a lot of the sounds, and so that a lot of the songs I write, and I hear that in this album, that it's evoking that. It's kind of going back to those roots.
Yeah.
Which I guess the question I'm asking is, beyond is it's retro, or what are you using the 70s or 60s as sort of like it's as a sounds like this, that going for that style, which a lot of bands will do, consciously. They want us, create something that's, 60s or 70s sounding. But how do you see that as a source material or inspiration? And we've talked about this before, it's definitely, you can hear the 60s, you can hear the 70s, but then there's a timelessness too, to it. And it's like just American music that like speaks to sort of where we're all coming from.
I think it came out organically. I mean, everything's in here. It's in my consciousness of all the music I love is in there. And then I was trying to make a conscious effort to make it sound contemporary as well. The influences, that I listen to right now with, neo soul and hip hop and R&B and all of that, that I listen to now. But not really. With each song, it just kind of came out the way it did. And I feel like ultimately, because I'm in, my own little bubble with this thing, and not being able to like really truly play an instrument and kind of flesh out with an instrument like piano or guitar to other musicians, I'm just singing it. It's like, here's what's in my head. And then when the other musicians come in, then they bring an influence. So I love that, because it's like it takes it where I didn't know it was going to go, So.
Yes, that's true. That the songwriting, it's kind of the songwriting, there's the arranging, and then there's the actual performance. And along the way, a lot of things change. Again, Austin's great. I've worked with a lot of musicians that we have a lot in common. Like if I say it's, it's kind of got this funk, beat like this, and they go, oh, and you don't have to like,
Yeah.
hammer them over the head with it. They get it because they share those
Exactly.
reference points.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great musicians in Austin, so it makes it easy to work with people, and you find like the simpatico.
And that's exactly, I
aesthetic.
was fortunate enough to have this on this album and
Yeah.
making this album. Because it's not like we were a band before we started going to the studio. I mean, we had maybe 2 gigs before
Yeah.
we started recording with each other. Probably not even gigs, they were probably just really intense rehearsals.
That sounds like Austin.
So, but there's so many amazing musicians and they're so pro, all these guys on this record, Monte Mann,
Yeah.
Rusty Keith, Ron D'Argenio, we did it at his studio and he produced it, and you, Oliver Steck, Greg Wilson, and then, Michael Cross, Deanne Renee, Jackie Walker as singers. My God, I mean, they're my heart,
It is. The album is a little bit of a love letter to the
absolutely
to the
is.
Austin music community in
Yeah.
that way. I mean, I feel this. My little music fantasy that's always going on is that I want to produce this sound which is like
And Brandon Lane, I'm sorry, Brandon Lane, I didn't mention drums.
this it's like a soundtrack to this imaginary community that you want it to be real.
Yeah.
But in the process of creating the music, it is real. And so this idea that we're all getting together to have a party, it's like it's the party is like the very last thing because it's so much work, putting it all together and
Right.
and all the obstacles. But when you're on stage,
Oh, yeah.
it is the music is kind of it's both like the soundtrack for the party and it is the party.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I hear that album and the graphics and everything on it. It's like it just feels like, oh, this is like we're going to like a party at Joanna's place. And this
I
is
love that.
This is the soundtrack.
I love that because I love to throw a party.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you on stage in Austin
Thank you, Paul.
and the world.
Yeah. Always great to share a stage with you.
Cool.
In whatever formation we end up in.
We'll see what the future brings.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. This was fun.
Thank you, Joanna.